Okay, so today we're going to take a really quick look at running Python inside the RStudio IDE. In this example I'm using RStudio Server. This works the same in the open source and the pro version. Obviously the pro version's got a lot of other great features as well, but this works on all recent versions of RStudio Server, as well as the desktop version as well. So really this feature kind of relies on this terminal tab right here. So the kind of background to the problem here is that a lot of people have RStudio Server. That's great. They can run their R code really nicely. You can run, whole scripts. You can run chunks of scripts, and that sort of thing. But there isn't really a nice way of doing the same thing in Python. So there are some features in RStudio that make working with Python okay. Actually, it's pretty decent. So you won't find in here, you won't find sort of tab complete. You won't find any kind of automated linting or anything like that. You won't find help. But if you're a pretty, reasonably competent Python programmer, hopefully you can get by with syntax highlighting and then just being able to run things in a kind of similar way as you would with R, so in a console of sorts. So in RStudio, what I've done here, obviously I'm using a dark theme, but I've also arranged the editing pane and the console and terminal pane next to each other just so they fit in the video better. Obviously, generally you'll find the console and terminal pane underneath the code editing pane. So you're obviously familiar with the R console, and you can press Command and Enter or Control and Enter on Windows to run code that you've highlighted, or the current line maybe, in the console. Now it's that we're looking to try and emulate a little bit here. So one way of doing that is to use the terminal feature, which was introduced quite recently, but all the recent versions of RStudio, both server and desktop, have got this. And what we've done is we've opened up this little Python file, which is very, very basic. There's nothing exciting in this file at all, but it is Python code. You can see it's got a little Python symbol on it. It has a .py extension, and RStudio has correctly guessed that it is a Python code, and that's where obviously it's got all the syntax highlighting and stuff like that from. So what we can do is we can use the new terminal feature to actually run our Python code in a very similar way to the way that we run our R code. So what we'll do is we'll just start up, we'll do this a couple of ways. We'll do it with IPython 3 first of all. The 3 is because I'm running Python 3.6.5 on this system, and we'll just go back over to the code editing window, and I'm on a Mac, so I'm using Option, Command and Enter. If you're on Windows, it would be Control, Alt and Enter, but it's pretty straightforward. So you just hit that key combination, and it passes the line that you're on over to the terminal, which in this case is running IPython 3. So this is actually pretty clever. This is very similar to the way that you might work with R. You can skip through some lines there. We can run those, and we get the results that we expect. Okay, that works pretty well. If you've got a continuation, the colon thing in Python, you can select an area like that, and then hit return, Option Command Return to pass that over to the interpreter to be executed, and that will be executed over there, which is really good. And then we'll select a little chunk of this because I want you to see what happens when you do this with IPython at least. So I've selected 3 lines on the left hand pane there. Again, not very exciting, but it will demonstrate what we're after. If I now press Option, Command and Enter, it's run the first line but not the next 2. So that's a limitation in IPython. But actually, if we step through, if we're okay to step through line at a time, we can step through line at a time, and it works exactly in the way that you would anticipate that it should, which is great. So that's IPython. If you're an IPython user, obviously a lot of people will just prefer the standard Python interpreter. So we'll run that and we'll try that next. The standard Python interpreter actually works a little bit better. So if we just step through these again, line at a time, absolutely fine. And that does, you know, again, exactly what we would expect it to. This time, if I highlight those first 3 lines and I do Option, Command and Enter, it actually runs all 3 lines. It doesn't just run the first one and then stop. So in using the standard Python interpreter, we can run multi-line blocks of code. And I'll do so. I'll select the rest of this little chunk here, and I'll do the same, and we get a lot of output about the type and the number of dimensions and so on, the sizes for these NumPy arrays. So it actually works really, really well. You can, again, as I said before, you can step through line at a time, or you can select a block of code and you can run that, and it works exactly the way that you would expect it to, which again, isn't ideal because we don't have all the kind of help and those kind of things built into RStudio for Python that we do for R. But I think for a lot of people, this approach, this way of working will be just as good, especially with RStudio Server, because it means that you can maintain that same kind of security. So you can log in, you can work with your R code, you can work with your Python code in a very, very similar way. I think it's pretty cool. Obviously, your mileage may vary, but if you want to give it a try, give it a go, and let me know how you get on. You'll find me on Twitter @Salorm. Thanks very much.